Hi, this is Stephanie Vaughn, and welcome to Ageless. Our guest is in the studio and ready to share their story. So come on, let's get started.
Today is going to be a fun conversation with a very upbeat, organized, and busy lady. Krista is married to her college sweetheart, Joseph, and is a homeschooling mom to her beautiful, multifaceted 6-year-old daughter, Fashionista. She loves hosting fun, competitive game nights when she isn't busy and enjoys connecting with women and encouraging them to find purpose in their lives. I am so thrilled to introduce you to Krista Ayers. So good to be with you today.
Thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to this.
I'm so excited to hear your story and everything about you. What are some exciting things have you been doing?
Well, I actually, since you mentioned I homeschool my daughter, we are on what's considered a year-round schedule. Most kids, they go to school, 9 or 10 months a year, but we do year-rounds. We have a lot of free range in our schedulings. We can take a vacation in the middle of the school year, things like that. She actually just finished kindergarten last week.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you. We're celebrating that with her. She's planned a whole day. In a few weeks, we're going to get started with her first grade curriculum, too. It's all going really quickly. I just figure while she's excited, we might as well keep the ball rolling and just let her power on through at her speed. So I'm
Awesome.
happy to do it.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to rag you in just a minute. Have you had any game nights at your house?
Oh, absolutely. And I just love having close friends and family over at the house. I just feel like it kind of recalibrates you, from the busyness of the world. So yes, we definitely had some game nights recently. You just have so much fun being with close friends and family, and you just laugh. It's like you're kind of riding that high for the next 2 or 3 days. So that's definitely my favorite thing to do is have some game nights at the house.
So here's the rag part. You were invited to our house. And for some reason, you did not appear so that we get that laughter over here as well.
That now that I've gotten to meet everybody and I see that they can match my daughter's energy, I think I would be happy to come over and bring her because she is the life of the party. So yeah, I definitely look forward to a game night at your house next.
Okay, so be ready.
I'm ready.
And of course, Joseph has to come too.
Oh yes. Now don't judge me when you see how competitive I am. Oh yes.
I want to hear your story. And what I'd like you to do is start off with a short view of what life was like as a child all the way through college, including your connection with Joseph. You've shared a little bit about your 6-year-old Fashionista, but if you want to add some more, you can.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised here in Georgia. Neither of my parents are from Georgia, so they brought their own, diverse background into the mix. My youngest memories are of my parents not being together. There's never a time I remember my parents being together. So as long as I can remember, it was always a split home. I spent the majority of my time with my dad, and I saw my mom on holidays, weekends, things like that. So I always felt like I got to see them equally. It's not like I was longing for one parent or the other. So that was good. I have a half brother and sister, so I got to see them. And essentially some people would say that sounds rough, but I kind of got the best of both worlds because, at my mother's house, I was the baby. So I got to live that. I had my older brother and sister, and then at my dad's house, I was the only child, essentially. It wasn't always easy, but I definitely have a lot to be thankful for. I do. So that's what life looked like going back and forth. I would say probably a really pivotal time in my childhood there was a brief time my mother went through a difficult time, and she felt like she could process that better on her own, away from family. So when I was about 11, my mom stepped out of the picture, and my dad was raising me full time. Of course, being a little girl, that was definitely challenging. I think that was the first time where I really noticed like an absence that something I was longing for that I suddenly didn't have at my accessibility. I think that led to probably a lot of searching, trying to figure out who I was, what kind of young woman I was going to be, what kind of woman I was going to be. And that really They already say that kind of the teenage years really sculpt and mold you a lot, but I think for me it did maybe even more so than I would say like the typical adolescence, because I really had to figure it out, and I was longing to figure that out, and I didn't feel like I had the model to look to anymore. I didn't have an example, so it's kind of like being a trailblazer in my life. You know what I mean? Because I do have wonderful grandparents, but I have a lot of family in Canada on my mom's side, and I was close with them, but as close as you could be when they're in another country, right? My grandmother's wonderful. She's, exactly the kind of woman you would hope to be, but she just couldn't be around me as much. So I was saying how my adolescence was a lot of searching, a lot of questioning who I was, trying to figure out who I was, who I wanted to be. And thankfully, I came to know Christ when I was about 17. And well, if anything can give you an identity, it's finding Christ. So for me, that was also new in my family. I come from on my dad's side, they're very Catholic, so it was I'm grateful for it. I may disagree with some doctrines, but I'm very grateful. It gave me a foundation. It still did, because they recognized the Lord. You know what I mean? So at least there was some respect for the house of God, some respect for God in your life, things like that. So I'm very grateful for that background. But coming to know Christ, being a Christian and not being Catholic, it looked a little bit different. And again, I didn't have anyone to look to for that model. So I think I really, for my identity, for my purpose, for my function in life, I would say from that point on, Christ had to become my model, because I didn't have one. And at that point in my life, I didn't have a lot of mentors either, especially older women to look to, which I did crave. Like I knew I was craving that. I was self-aware enough to know I really craved, an older woman or women to guide me in what my life was becoming. But I really had to look to Christ for that. I really had to seek his word, seek his will. Looking back, it was difficult, but looking back, I'm grateful for that, because, it's like the scripture says, how do you know that God is a friend that sticks closer than a brother if you haven't had a few lonely nights? And that was me. How do I know that God can guide me in the darkness if I didn't spend some time in the darkness? And so looking back, I'm grateful I had that time, because I really had to depend on him a lot. I went to college, and that's where I met my good-looking Ken Barbie doll. We didn't have a big dramatic movie meeting, we just kind of met each other, started talking. I had to be cautious. I was raised by a military dad, so it was all about safety, this and that. So we talked on the phone a lot before I went out with him. And it was like within 2 weeks, we were in love. We were going to be together forever. That was it. Like that part, that's like a movie. Like it really did happen. That quickly. We knew right away we were each other's forever. That's what we wanted.
I love it.
So we have a 6-year-old daughter. We kind of waited about 5 years to have kids. We dated a while because we wanted to finish school, almost 4 years before we got married. And then we waited 5 years to have our daughter because we were serving in ministry, and the ministry was our baby. At that time, we were youth pastors for 5 years. And the kids were our kids. That was where our free time was. We spent nights with them and going out with them and being at church. But the Lord spoke a word one day that it was time to have kids, and we were obedient to that. And before we knew it, she was on the way. So here we are.
That was great. And youth ministry takes a lot of time, and you want to see the best in them.
I would say being in church, you have the people who may go to a service and they'll listen because they're already there, right? But kids, their parents are bringing them. So they're not going to listen to you unless they have a relationship with you.
Well, I really want to touch a little bit about you and your dad. And first, I want to thank him as well as all the military people who have served. So that is a sacrifice, and I appreciate that. If you could just tell us briefly how the positive side of your dad serving in the military became a part of you. How did that affect you?
I would say in a lot of subtle ways as far as what I observed, but in profound ways in how it translated into my personality, the kind of person I am. It was things like my dad was very much like, you don't quit no matter what. So my dad he was a Green Beret. That was years ago, but back then they called it a Green Beret was $1 million soldier. They said it took $1 million to train a Green Beret. You don't quit when the government's putting $1 million into you as an investment. I would say I definitely learned a bit of tenacity from my dad, that it's not, I can't, or it won't happen. It's you figure it out no matter what it is. There's always another way. I love that because I think that also translates into having hope for a bit longer than maybe some people do. And especially knowing Christ then, right? and because he is the hope of the world. And so I'm really grateful for that. That's probably one of the biggest aspects of him serving that translated into how he parented me, is that you can always get it done. You got to have the tenacity to do it, and you don't quit. And another thing he really greatly instilled in me is a sense of responsibility. For example, there was one year I tried out for the volleyball team and I didn't make it. And I did not, and I had always made a sports team, and I didn't make it that year. And I tell you, my dad had no tears for me. He had no poor babies for, you know what I mean? Like, there was no coddling.
Okay.
He wasn't cruel or unkind, but he was very point blank and said, the only reason you didn't make it is because you didn't train hard enough. Because if you did, you would have made it, right? And so I think even that one moment, that one year, that one sports team, even that sculpted me that, like, if it doesn't work out, I got to own it. What can I do better? I need to self-reflect, see what failed, and moving forward, I got to make a change to get the results that I want to see.
I love that. As we transition to focus on women and the value of making good connections with each other, I would love to hear about some of the women, including your mom, that have personally and positively made a difference in your life.
I have been so fortunate. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a crier, so I'm bound to shed a couple tears in this interview at least once. I would say that I know for a fact anything I lacked in having a mom in my life for a certain amount of time, God has restored to me just tenfold. He just has. And I am so grateful and so fortunate that, here it is, I'm gonna cry, I'm a crier. But I have a wonderful, wonderful group of women in my life today. Some, whether they're my age or younger and older, all the way up to from their 20s to their 80s, basically. I just have wonderful, wonderful women in my life, people I can lean on and who encourage me. And I mean, it's just exactly what I would hope for anybody. And that's why, like with you, I feel like I share a passion for that, for women having that kind of support in their life, because it is biblical. I'm Christian, so of course I filter my life through the word, and the word says that we're supposed, the older are supposed to teach the younger, so that's my model. But we just need that. Even if you don't believe in God, you need that. You need someone to kind of guide you by the hand, through times that you don't know how to navigate life. Mm-hmm. And so I would definitely say the biggest influence, of course, in my life would probably be my mom, for the good, for the bad, the easy, the hard. But I'm grateful for everything God brought out of that. I will say that having her absent for a couple years, I was, at the time, that was most definitely the hardest thing that I had ever been through. I mean, it was traumatic. There was a lot of tears, a lot of resentment and anger, that I had to process and go through, a lot of grief, I think. But seeing how our relationship has developed, and I think being able to let go of what life was, quote unquote, supposed to look like for a mother and daughter, being able to let that go and then just build upon what we have and move forward. I think that in itself has taught me a lot. In life, sometimes we really do just have to let go of what our expectation for life was. And we just have to build it back up with the pieces that we're given. Mm-hmm. And so for my mom now, I would say that we have a great relationship, for everything that was lost. I mean, we talk almost every day. She's going to church with me now, which is just wonderful, something I never could have imagined. So I'm getting to see her every week. I'm getting to share the most important part of my life with her. So not to be too wordy, but to answer, I would say my mom has most definitely impacted me tremendously through hard times, and then seeing the hope of what God can do, even, he says beauty from ashes, right? To see the beauty that he's brought from the ashes of like the worst of the worst for a parenting relationship, But beyond my mom, I would definitely have to say there is a best friend that we both know. We've been very good friends for like 15 years. And she is just one of those friends I'm so grateful for, because I tell her all the time, one of the best things is when you have a friend who, when you go to tell them something, you don't have to give the backstory because they were there with you through it. So like you update them on a situation or somebody, they already know the depth of what went on with that. So they understand the depth of why it's affecting you that way and stuff. And so for me, I'll just name it, Kim has just been a lifeline for me for sure through some of the most difficult times. And there is, I'm going to cry again, but there's just a loyalty with her that it is such a blessing when when you feel like you've kind of had the greatest rejection in life from a parent, when my mom was not there. And so when you see someone who offers you just unwavering loyalty, that is a blessing. It's very much a blessing, and it's something you don't take for granted. So
Hey, that's okay. This is raw because people can hear your heart.
for sure. I think that's why the Lord didn't give me time to polish this week. And then there's two older women from church. They're about my parents' age. And when my husband and we were still dating, we started attending a church. And I didn't feel like I fit in, like at all. I just didn't. And there was this one woman, she just took me under her wing. She didn't have a daughter, but boy, she treated me just like a daughter. They actually had a mother-daughter dinner, and she knew that I didn't have a mom in my life, and so she invited me to that. And that just touched my heart, right, so much. And to this day, we are just the best of friends. She's a little older than me, and so I have a lot to glean from her, but she's been wonderful. I think during my 20s, she very much filled that role that I was needing, offered me some very practical advice and guidance and navigating and, being there as a newlywed, a new wife, all those things. She was the one who really helped me navigate that part of my life. And then as I got older, there's another woman who comes to mind, and she is a part of our weekly meeting that I go to, a women's meeting. And she just came up to me out of the blue one day and just said, I think the Lord said that we should be friends. And she said, I know that I'm older than you, and you probably think I'm old, and as she's saying that, I'm trying to keep a poker face, but I'm thinking, oh my gosh, please, like, this is exactly what I wanted. Someone older to take me under their wing. And, I just really wanted that. And so she came along, and she was just a godsend. She was exactly what I needed for that season of life. And now she's still in my life very much, and we see each other every week. So yeah, I would say that, beginning with my mom, but then those three women, they came along at exactly the right time, and they're still very much involved in my life today. They have literally just changed the course of my life during the most pivotal moments of my life, I would say, for sure.
So, what are some of the things that have caused you to imitate or express what you've received from them?
Well, I would say for the woman who came along, who invited me to the mother-daughter, that was a phase in my life where I was just kind of getting into serving in ministry.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that looked like, at least not in the circles that I knew. So I didn't really have anyone my age, at that time to link arms with and stuff. So she came along at that time, and she really showed me how to serve, like what it looks like, and serving with excellence above all. So I would say that she was really critical in showing me what it looks like to be a wife and have a family, and then also give everything you got to the Lord too, and she's a working woman, so she kind of does it all. And so there's a lot of what she taught me that I still want to emulate.
You're doing it.
I'm really grateful to have that model to look to.
Okay.
And then my friend who I see every week, she's a few years older than me, and one of the most compassionate people I know. And what I love about her and that I want to emulate is that she's always very authentic, and has been from the beginning. She's never been the kind of person to say that, just because she's a Christian, her life looks peachy keen. She's always been very open. If she's gone through a struggle, she's just been very transparent. And for me, that always made me feel like I don't have to pretend. Looking to Christ to help me navigate life, even messy, letting go of what I think life is supposed to look like, and just trusting God through whatever my life looks like. That's definitely something I constantly want to emulate from her. And then with Kim, there's a million wonderful attributes that are, from her patience to her articulation and feelings and everything. I mean, there's just so much, I think, especially being close in age, she hits it home right where I am sometimes. I think for looking to older women in my life, it's kind of projecting of what my life can look like in a few years.
Yes.
But I think looking at Kim, it allows me to emulate the kind of character I can have in these years and where I am. That's how she constantly impacts me, and things I would like to glean and emulate from her, for sure.
Very nice. How have some of these women made you or make you smile, even laugh out loud at the little things in life?
Oh my goodness. Some people would think it's maybe inappropriate humor to laugh during a hard time, right? But if things were difficult, my dad always saw the humor in it. I mean, every time. And so I think for a lot of the people closest to me, just being able to laugh at life and just see the humor in it, and just recognize that, I mean, it happens to all of us. We all go through a difficult time, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, financial, anything. We all we all go through it, so sometimes you just got to laugh and just trust God in the process. Like, don't lose your joy. Pretty much all the women in my life have a pretty good sense of humor. I think you have to have a good sense of humor to be friends with me. I think that's a lot. They really help me just to find the humor in what I'm going through, and maybe not take life so seriously sometimes when it feels very serious, and that I'm definitely grateful for that.
One of your life's passions is helping others. You said you want to help them step into their identity and find lasting meaning and purpose for their lives. Can you explain what you mean by that?
What I really struggled with a lot was my identity and my value and worth. Instead of looking at who I am and who God says I am, I often looked at where I came from and how messy it was, how ugly it was. I came from parents who were not divorced but never even married. That would plague me when I was younger. Nobody planned for me. I just happened to be here. But that's not what Christ says about me. He says I'm fearfully, I'm wonderfully made. He says he knew me in the womb. When my husband proposed to me, I must have wept for a full 24 hours. I think about that, and the reason I was so touched when my husband proposed, because that was someone saying they wanted a life with me. We're not here on accident. God planned us. He wanted us. He doesn't need us, but he looked down and said, I don't have a Krista. I need a Krista.
Yeah.
I think with how much I've struggled with identity, I want to see somebody else set free from that too. I love seeing somebody set free from the lie that they don't matter, because the price paid for me was Christ. For me, seeing someone be able to see that and see themselves as having value and being worthy, it changes everything. I love that for other women, because being a woman, that was something I struggled with.
Yeah. How do you cross age barriers, since we seem to be living in an age-based society?
That's so true. So many people put such an emphasis on age, but a lot of that has to do with humbling yourself and knowing that you can learn and glean from anybody. Everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something valuable that they bring. For me, I never find that difficult speaking with or having a relationship with or friendship with somebody who's younger than me, like a young lady who's in her 20s I'm very close with. And she encourages me, all the time. We can relate to each other because, the scripture says there's nothing new under the sun, right? But at the core of it, I think a lot of the emotions that we endure through it, the situation, we can always relate to each other on, Experiences are a lot more similar than people think if they can look past the initial titles that we put on each other.
We're not promised to have years of friendship with someone.
Right.
Do you think it's beneficial to, reach out to someone even though you don't know how long that friendship's going to be?
Yeah, I would say it's most definitely beneficial, because even for me, there's been people in my life who were in my life for a season, but we ended up maybe parting ways. But looking back on it, I even have, there's one friendship I think of in particular. There was a girl I was very good friends with during my junior high and high school years. She was just my best friend. And unfortunately, our friendship parted ways, not in a pretty way. We just had to cut ties. And that's unfortunate. But looking back, I can see why. And I think it was beneficial for both of us. Our lives had very different trajectories. But at the same time, too, it's so easy to see all the good that came from that and how we were able to support each other during that season of life. Like I said, I think we can all glean something from each other. And so you never know when someone is supposed to be in your life for such a time as this. And so I think it's always worth exploring that and reaching out to others, because just like with the woman who had invited me to the mother-daughter dinner, that was literally the start of our friendship. Just one invite. Probably was thinking that, we'll just have dinner and then that's it, because we're different ages, we don't have much in common. She may have thought that too, but who would have known? However many years, 12 years later, I think that, we're still just very, very close friends.
Friendships that are based on how old you are, what you look like, the clothes you purchase, along with some other things that I'm sure we can think of, can be very disappointing. So how are you touching the lives of other women, paying it forward with some of the positive ways that you've received over the years?
Yeah, I would say that since I have just had tremendous kindness, shown to me, especially I would say starting out with older women, that's something that I look to, because if I'm honest, I think we all have insecurities, but if I'm honest, when I think of, approaching a younger woman, I know I'm not like very old, but like, I'm definitely not 21 anymore, right? So when I think of approaching a young woman like that, I mean, initially, my first thought is, she's not going to want to have anything to do with me. I'm not hip. I'm not, I don't have these cool shoes, cool hair, multicolor hair and all piercings. I'm not cool, right? I'm not hip. Like, why would she want to take up time with me? And she doesn't need me. Those are the thoughts that come to my mind. She doesn't need me. She's probably got plenty of friends. But there's probably some people who thought that about me at the time. Maybe once upon a time I was hip. But even just in a different phase of life, once upon a time I was in my 20s. And I probably looked, happy, like I was fine. I was engaged to be married and, I was in church. I probably looked like my life was doing okay. But on the inside, I had a lot of healing that needed to take place. And God was going to do that through different women in my life. And so I want to pay it forward, I would say, by paying the cost of vulnerability, being willing to be rejected, I think is the thing. And that's hard, especially from someone who has a deep rejection wound, that I had to sort through in my life. I think just being willing to give up vulnerability and put yourself out there for someone else, because if they don't need it, that's okay. I'm grown. I can sort through my emotions. If you don't need me in your life, that's okay. Well, good. If you don't need me, that's good. You must be in a healthy place. But if you do, I would hope that I could even just give just a tenth of a degree, some healing or peace or encouragement or being able to uplift you, just a fraction of the way that other women have me. So I think it's worth it, even if you get rejected or even if, somebody doesn't want something to do with you, just being willing to reach out. I think being willing to be vulnerable and accept the cost of rejection is worth it for how much I've gotten from other women. I think that's a real small price to pay to be able to attempt to pay it forward.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. And something you said, that rejection, sometimes we go in expecting certain things. And when we do that, it's a failure to us when those expectations aren't met.
Yeah,
so
right.
Women connecting as friends look beyond the outer and more so focus on the inner. Yeah. In what ways do you manage to have some free time for yourself?
Well, I would love to say I have that all figured out, but if I'm being honest, I don't. I still struggle with that sometimes. It's like you reap what you sow, right? So like I think sometimes if you want peace in your marriage, you got to sow into your marriage a little bit. If you want to be a good parent, you got to sow into parenting a little bit. See what you can learn. What you can do better. And so I think if you want like sometimes emotional peace and that you've been able to recharge and things like that, you have to sow into it and make the time for it. And so sometimes maybe I don't stop to think about how much I need that until I'm on edge. Maybe starting to get a little snippy because yeah. So I mean, I'm kind of an introvert and extrovert, most definitely. But as far as they say, extroverts, they recharge by being around people. Introverts, they recharge by solitude, being by themselves. So in that regard, that is very much me. In order to recharge, I need some quiet space, my own time and things like that. I can't always leave for a day or something because my husband, he works a full-time job and his schedule is changing. And that would really only leave like a Saturday when I could do that. But, Saturdays usually booked up 3 Saturdays in advance, right? For me, I think it's about finding those moments to recharge. It's like maintenance, instead of looking for like one big fill-up day, to go off and do something, finding little times to maintenance yourself and your emotional health. And, even if that means, don't get me wrong, I love sleeping in, whatever that is. But you know what? It's worth it to get up an hour early so that you can go sit, have a coffee by yourself, read, pray, whatever you want to do just to recharge. So things like that, even if it means losing an hour of sleep, is very much worth it for the peace that you gain from it. In that regard, I would say I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still navigating it. But for me, it's more about, instead of finding a big time to recharge and have time for myself, it's about finding little times along the way just to make sure I stay calibrated.
No, that's good. I like that. We do try to grab that whole afternoon, and when we do that, we fill it up with so much stuff that when we get back, we're tired.
Exactly. Definitely done that.
Yes.
So maybe have like a big thing to look forward to, kind of like a people vacation once a year, because it gives you something to look forward to.
Yes.
But you can't work 364 days a year, waiting for one vacation day. Nobody can survive on that. Have one day, whether it's one day a month or every other month, whatever, have a day to go do something, maybe something big But I think along the way, at least for me, it's definitely about the regular maintenance of making sure that I take some time for myself is what makes me feel like I'm not losing my mind, you know.
I like that. I
Exactly.
like that. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
What positive ways have you found to keep yourself from comparing yourself with other women as you're homeschooling your daughter and as a stay-at-home mom?
Yeah. That's such a good question because I mean that is just the epitome of things that I have battled and thought about and had to heal from things. Like we talked about, I think it's letting go of an expectation, being willing to not just saying, okay, I have to be a trailblazer, I have to do something new because I don't have an example, but instead taking that and being like, I get to be a trailblazer.
Mhm.
I get to create my own traditions. I get to decide what I value most in raising a family. I get to decide what I value most in being a friend, a woman, a daughter. I get to decide what I value most and decide what that's supposed to look like. And so I think for me, it's all about my posture towards it because I think it's all women, tend to compare. I think, and not even just women, I think men, I think in life, we tend to compare, each other because I think we all want some sort of validation that we're doing good or we're doing okay or, we're not that bad or this or that. We all look for that validation. And so for me, I would say that's definitely a trap that still comes to mind. I'm not impervious to those thoughts. I would say when it comes up, just being self-aware enough to know that one, that's not healthy. It's not going to benefit anything at all. Just recognizing that, nobody has to set that standard. It's good to have an example. Some women have, a long line of wonderful women, mothers, grandmothers, and aunts and stuff that they have been able to glean from. And that's beautiful. Like, I love that. I would hope that for somebody, but I think a lot of people don't. To those who don't, I would say look at it as an opportunity because even women who come from a long line of that, it started somewhere. It started with somebody.
Yes.
A lot of times people who fall into that trap of comparison, they're
Mhm.
also the ones who want the most to feel validated and to feel like they're doing something good and they want to have influence. Well, if you're a trailblazer with no example, you have the most influence because you can literally influence the trajectory of your family and
Yes.
what that looks like. And I get to set, some traditions for me that my daughter can follow. So I think it's all about when those thoughts come to mind, just being able to recognize it and reposture yourself to see not what a disadvantage it is, but what an opportunity it is to make things look the way you'd like to look and to value the things you'd like to value and to be able to carry that on in your family.
That's beautiful.
I spent too long in those years of questioning myself and, comparing myself and all that. I spent too long doing that. It's like if someone can hear some encouragement from somebody who also felt those things and cut that time short and move on to a healthy place sooner, and just have more years to impact others and grow and learn it. Cut the toxicity short. You know what I mean? Just cut it off so you can move on to better things. I would love somebody to be able to do that.
All of the positive things that you've received, how have you poured that onto your daughter?
You know, some days you wonder if you do. Some days you wonder if you like, are you doing that? Am I like, there's Lisa Turkhurst.
Hmm.
I'm familiar with her, but yeah, she is. I love her approach because I feel like she's someone who's very authentic. As a matter of fact, I think she recently came out with a book that literally, I think it's titled something like, "Am I Messing Up My Kids?"
Oh,
you know, you know,
okay.
I love that because I think we've all thought that sometimes, right? So I definitely, I think I miss it some days, but I would like to think most importantly is that I'm authentic. I don't ever want to set up a bar that I'm a Christian or I'm a wife or I'm a mom and this is what it looks like and I got it all together. Every now and again she'll say, "Mom, I want to be just like you." And in that moment I'm thinking, Lord, no. So I always tell her, "Well, that's nice, baby, but be like Jesus," because mommy doesn't get it right all the
Hmm.
time. I hope there's some things you want to be like me, but be like Jesus. And I just want to tell, not to speak like in a cliched way, but I just do that to dismiss it with humor, but in essence, for her to aim higher because I'm not perfect. I think that's one of the biggest things I want to instill in her, that it's okay that things get messy sometimes. It's okay that sometimes you're just in a foul mood and not a joy to be around. You have your days where you're off, but then in those moments you go back and you apologize. So it's like I want to, again, I hope I don't cry, but I think I want to show her A lot of people feel like they can navigate success because you feel good. When you succeed at something, you already feel good. You already feel like you're winning, you're doing it right. I think the difficult navigation comes in failing. And so if I could instill anything in her, I want to teach her how to fail well. When things don't go well, when you've missed it, when it's not perfect, I want to teach her how to navigate those times. I would want to instill in her that you don't need to look a certain way. You don't need to pretend you have it all together. You just need to, for me, being a Christian, it's, look to Christ for hope, because our a lot of people, they lose hope in things, but, Christ is the hope of the world and he's unchanging. So our hope doesn't have to change, and that there's always restoration and there's always healing and there's always an opportunity to do better. Because for me, I was always very hard on myself that it didn't look a certain way because I was always striving for perfection. I would want to instill in her that it's okay to fail. It's okay to not be perfect. You just always strive to do your best, and you always strive to be better and do better. And that's the best we can do, because none of us are perfect. There's a lot I would want to instill in her, but that's probably one of the biggest, is to not only succeed, but to be able to fail well.
How would you encourage us women to take opportunities to cross age lines and connect, not just for the purpose of gaining encouragement and receiving help, but to have fun and laugh together?
For how, that is tough. It's so funny. It seems so basic to be able to make friends, but it's kind of hard to make friends these days. It really is. Especially in the days of social media and things like that. Everybody's used to, I don't know, that I think we kind of, not to sound like, oh, we're lacking, we don't talk to each other anymore. A lot of people say that, but it's kind of true. We're not as used to face-to-face interactions anymore. It's things like, going to, a doctor's office or wherever there's a waiting room. Nobody was on their phone. They were all talking to each other in a waiting room. And that's how you meet people. You have to talk to people. And, when I'm in a waiting room, I look around and see phones, and I kind of hate it. And so in situations like that, like, I'll take it upon myself, again, being willing to be vulnerable. Somebody may just look at you and be like, leave me alone, I'm on my phone. But at the same time, too, we're all so hungry for relationship and things. Just taking a moment to spark up a conversation, even I think for women, for women, honestly, I feel like it's a little easier to do that. Because it can be as simple as complimenting someone's shoes. And here's an example with my friend Kim. One of my dearest closest friends. I kid you not, our whole friendship started was because I was wearing a hoodie that said "Be like Christ," and she said that she liked my hoodie. That was the first thing she ever said to me. And I was like, thanks, I got it from so-and-so. And that sparked our conversation. And that's it, like almost 15 years later, here we are and we're best friends. So I think people would find, if they're willing to step out and just talk to somebody, just strike up the smallest conversation, even if it's something about the weather, just say something to somebody. I think they would be surprised how hungry people are for a relationship, and how hungry they are to engage with people, because we're created for that. I think people would find it's a lot easier to build connections than they realize if they'll just step out and just introduce themselves. So I would say how to cross barriers is just be willing to put yourself out there. Just try talking to somebody, and you may fumble through it at first, but you know what? Eventually it gets easier. And if you're genuinely wanting to start building relationships and cross, age barriers and things, also be willing to grow, and seek out the tools to help you get better at building relationships, because it will pay off for sure.
And it takes trust.
Yes.
And that's what's hard.
Right.
It's going to take some work, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we are almost at the end of our time. This has been so much fun. So I'm going to say this to you, Krista, you are ageless.
All right.
Okay. If I walked up to you and said that, how would you view yourself? Would you be more vibrant, energetic? Tell me how that made you feel.
I would say being ageless makes me, I think it's like you said, it's more freeing. It's liberating to hear that you're ageless, that you believe or know that you're ageless. That's liberating, because I think that means you've broken past the confines and barriers of a number. And that translates to everything from, like we talked about, building relationships. You're ageless. You can talk to somebody in their teens. You can talk to a woman in her 80s, and everything in between. You're not confined by what your age is. And same thing with what you do. You can do great things, in your 80s. You can do wonderful things in your teens. You know what I mean? And everything in between. That being ageless, I think, just means not being confined to a number on your driver's license. It means that you can do whatever you set out to do. You can communicate with anybody that you put the effort in communicating to. You can glean from anyone, and people can glean from you at whatever age as well.
So how do you pass that energy on to somebody else?
I think someone may disagree, but I think for me, it was other people setting the example. So I think you pass that on by being the example, by showing what it looks like to be ageless, by willing to branch out and speak to people from all different ages and backgrounds, and but not, saying, well, I can't do that, I'm too old, or, I'm too young, they never listen to me. Not limiting yourself. And I think really setting the example is what helped me to break past those barriers. So that's what I hope to do for someone else, is to live it out.
Okay.
So that's possible.
I love it. I love it. Finally, if you were a spice, which one would you be?
Oh boy. I'm a spicy gal. Like, my food has to have a lot of flavor.
Which one would you be?
That's okay. Well, I guess I'll take it back to a basic. If I had to pick one, I'll go with garlic. I would say I would be garlic. Maybe this is hopeful. Not like a humble brag, but I'll say it's hopeful. Garlic, it's been there long after it leaves. So, I would say, hopefully I leave a lasting impression, although it's usually pungent, not in a good way, so that might be a bad example. But garlic, it adds a lot of flavor to life, but it has tremendous health benefits that a lot of people know and a lot of people don't. So it's like it's an undercover antibiotic and an undercover anti-inflammatory. You know what I mean? So I would hope that maybe I would be like garlic, where you definitely know I'm there. My effects linger long after I'm gone, and I offer some healthy additives to your life.
Okay, so how would you sprinkle your spice on other women?
Oh boy. Out of all the questions we've asked, the one about garlic is the hardest. That's the hardest. Okay, I would say that, how would I sprinkle that spice? I would, since it's long lasting, so I would say it can't be superficial. So I would think a lot of what we talked about, being authentic with people, so that you can get to know people authentically and on a deeper level. And anytime you get to know someone more deeply, you definitely have a lasting impression on them, hopefully, and they can leave a lasting impression on you. So I would say how to sprinkle that spice to not be superficial, to be willing to get in there, to be honest about your life, and some of your flaws. And I think when people see that, whenever you're vulnerable, I think that always opens the door for someone else's vulnerability. I think it creates a safe space. So how to add a little crystal garlic to somebody, I think would just be not be superficial, like get in there, dive deep, get to know people, let them get to know you, so that your life's aroma can linger long after you're gone.
Good answer.
Is it? I don't know, but that's all I got. Okay.
You like to share anything else before we close?
I would just say, thank you so much for, allowing me to speak with you on these things. I think just so many times, I think that's it. I think so many women have so much depth to them, but one, they don't realize it, or if they realize it, they don't have a venue to share that. And so I love the idea of this podcast. I love, getting the opportunity to talk to you and glean from you and hear your thoughts and things. And I think this in itself is an example of what that can look like, because we've done nothing special here except talk to one another and engage one another and ask questions. And so that would just be my final note that I would love to say is, like, look what we're doing here. And just imagine, how much you can do that outside of a podcast. You can do that in your daily life. You can have these wonderful conversations with other women, just like we're doing right now. It's possible because we just did it.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Hey, my friends. Thanks for joining me today on Ageless and for being an amazing part of this journey. Don't forget, you have been fearfully and wonderfully made. Go out today and live this life vibrantly. Until next time, bye for now.